At this point, the Nintendo Switch has been out for nearly 2 years, and within that time, a multitude of beautiful games have come out for the system. So I decided it was probably a good idea to come up with a best looking games list for the Nintendo Switch. Welcome everyone, this is AndresRestart, and in this video I'm going to show you guys a list of games that I believe are the best looking games on the Nintendo Switch. It may not just be about polygons and textures and frame rate, it may also have to do with the artistic direction, but overall, whatever game you see on this list, it's going to be the kind of game that you're going to be able to take and show a friend, and they're going to be impressed with what the Switch can do. So without further delay, let's get started. Now before we actually get into my top 5 list, I do have several honorable mentions. There are just so many beautiful games on the Nintendo Switch, there's no way I'm going to be able to bring them all up, but at least with these honorable mentions, I'll be able to get a good batch of them. Now for the indie scene, we have beautiful games such as Celeste and Fast RMX. And then when it comes to the third-party ports for the system, there are some pretty good looking games as well, such as Dark Souls Remastered, and then the Bethesda games such as Doom, Skyrim, and Wolfenstein 2. And unshockingly, there are also several Nintendo games that are a part of the honorable mentions, such as Splatoon 2, Kirby Star Allies, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But before we get into my top 5 best looking games for the Nintendo Switch, I have one more honorable mention. Yes, coming in at number 6, the final honorable mention is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I think Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a stellar game, it's a beautiful game, it's a sight to behold, but unfortunately, the resolution drops quite a bit in different areas of the game, and especially in handheld mode it drops very far down, and in handheld mode it just doesn't look really that good at all. But I want to stress that this game is beautiful. If it wasn't for the performance issues, I'd put this game maybe at the number 1 spot. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a beautiful game. There's just something so special about roaming around these giant magical worlds and seeing these giant titans moving about in the background. It's awe-inspiring, it truly is to me, and for that reason, it's the 6th best looking game on the Nintendo Switch, in my opinion. But now, let's get into our top 5. Now coming in at number 5, it's a game that isn't necessarily the biggest polygon pusher or the largest open world game ever, but it's a game that I think has a very unique art style that you will find nowhere else. And that game is Octopath Traveler. EA came up with this new art style called the HD 2D style. You're seeing sprites in a 3D environment with a 3D lighting engine. There's just something that's remarkably appealing about this style. To me, it's just pure eye candy. Seeing the lighting of the moves and how you move these sprites around in these 3D environments is a beautiful thing. It harkens back to the old RPGs from the early 90s and late 80s. It's a spectacular looking game, and it's also pretty good from what I hear, so you probably should check it out. And for those reasons, I'm putting Octopath Traveler as the 5th best looking game for the Nintendo Switch. Some of you might actually be surprised to hear that there's another third-party game in this list, and that game is Starlink Battle for Atlas. Starlink Battle for Atlas came out for PS4, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch, and yes, the Nintendo Switch is a weaker system by a pretty sizable margin, yet despite that, Starlink Battle for Atlas looks really good, and I think this is the definitive version on the Nintendo Switch. It may not hold up quite as well graphically, but the differences in my opinion are quite negligible. I don't feel like I'm getting the lesser experience. And that's just how well the game looks and runs in my opinion for the Switch. And of course the Switch version has the Star Fox content, and being able to see the R-Wing fly around in space, it's like I'm actually seeing a modern 3D open world Star Fox game, and that's just a beautiful thing to sort of imagine. But this game itself has very exotic planets, and it's just so cool to fly around and then decide to go outside of the planet, flying seamlessly out of the atmosphere into the solar system, and then flying across the solar system to another planet and going through the atmosphere to see an entirely different planet with a completely different environment. This is an incredible open world space game, and for that reason Starlink Battle for Atlas is the 4th best looking game on the Nintendo Switch. Super Mario Odyssey, in my opinion, was the most polished game for the Nintendo Switch in 2017, and the game is just gorgeous. To be able to explore these highly interactive, very colorful environments and see Mario roam freely in these sandbox worlds is just a beautiful thing. But perhaps what makes this game even more interesting to me is not just the polish and the color and the variety and the high frame rate and just the overall majesty of exploring these sandbox environments for a 3D HD modern day Mario game. It's the fact that this game brings in other art styles that don't necessarily mesh, but for whatever reason I think they actually fit really well. For example, you have the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It has this very detailed texture. It doesn't really match anything else in the game. When you look at other reptiles, they just look completely different. There's a lot more realistic detail put into the textures for this Tyrannosaurus Rex, but somehow it works. And the same can be said for New Donk City. There's something that's just very peculiar but also intriguing about the different NPCs that are roaming around New Donk City with these suits, and when you look at them and when you compare them to Mario, they're two different kinds of humans. They're both humans supposedly, but Mario is a much shorter, stockier version who's also a lot more colorful, but he just looks entirely different, like an entirely different race, yet we see both of them in New Donk City. And this combination of art styles, I think, is actually a really good thing, and it makes Super Mario Odyssey very unique even among Mario games. And for that reason, I think Super Mario Odyssey deserves to be the 3rd best looking game on the Nintendo Switch. Now for the number 2 spot, I wasn't entirely sure what I should pick. There were 2 games I was debating. I was siding a little bit more with one, but then when I put the community post on the channel a couple weeks ago to sort of see what you guys thought, you guys kind of swayed my opinion a little bit once I came to the realization of what really that game was doing. But before we get into the number 1 spot, I'm going to first talk about this game, the number 2 best looking game on the Nintendo Switch, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I can't get enough of the grass in Breath of the Wild. I think Breath of the Wild has the best looking grass ever. Seeing all of this tall, swaying grass on top of these giant green sprawling hills with these huge mountains and the entire environment of Hyrule. Something that's just so beautiful about this game is when you are climbing these mountains as the sun is setting and you get to the very top and you get to see the entire land of Hyrule, this huge landscape. To me, it's truly breathtaking. And even though the game also came out on Wii U and it's a launch title for the Nintendo Switch, the art style for Breath of the Wild, to me, it appeals much more than any other game on this list, and for that reason, it's the number 2 best looking game on the Nintendo Switch, in my opinion. But coming in at the number 1 spot, the best looking game on the Nintendo Switch is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Now at first, I didn't quite think that Smash Ultimate deserved to be considered the best looking game for the Nintendo Switch, but after thinking about it a little bit more, I now think it does. It's not just that the game runs at 1080p 60 frames per second and you can play with 8 characters on any stage in the game, something that can't be said about any other Smash Bros. Game in the past. There's a lot more to this game than just that. This game just looks so much better than its Wii U predecessor, and they remade from the ground up so many different stages. The Melee stages, the Brawl stages, the 3DS stages, they're all just stunning. But what I'm really trying to get at here is the fact that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is a culmination of different personalities and franchises and art styles into one singular vision. Seeing all of our favorite characters duke it out on all of these beautifully realized stages is perhaps the greatest sight to behold, because it makes everyone happy, and seeing these different games realized in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate so beautifully, it makes me happy, and I'm sure it makes so much other people happy as well. And there's also something else about Smash that I don't think gets enough mention. There are some characters in Smash Bros. That have not had a modern day entry for that particular series, yet they're still in Smash Bros. And yet we get to see them fully realized in 3D with beautiful animations and in spectacular looking stages. A great example of that is the Earthbound series. We get to see Ness and Lucas duke it out in all these different stages, and we can even use the camera controls to look around in more detail than ever before. So for all of these reasons, I think Super Smash Bros. Ultimate deserves to be considered the best looking game on the Nintendo Switch. But what do you guys think? Do you guys agree? Do you think there are other games that should be on this list that weren't mentioned? By all means, let me know in the comments below. But anyways everyone, thank you so much for listening and watching. I'll see you all really soon. Bye.